I hope this is going to be one such eye-opening session for most of the students, and particularly those who always talk about, sir, how to score the maximum in our interview and things like that. Because before they start the process, they always start talking about interview. Right, sir, Abhishek, sir. So I will request you to start with asking some of the basic questions, which I suppose you have become a master because you have the experience of creating the magic beforehand.
Well, good evening, everyone who has been kind enough to spare the time for us. And I welcome you to this interactive session. And first of all, let me introduce our chief panelist, so to speak. So that's Ms. Abala Mishra, who has secured All India Rank 9 this year. And she has achieved this virtually unheard of feat, where she has scored 215 marks in the interview. By interview, I mean the personality test, as UPSC calls it. And by the way, let me tell you, most of the time, if you see previous year's results, you'll see that 206 is the maximum marks that is usually given to any candidate. So how did she achieve this, like, unheard of feat, is what we will be focusing in this talk. And there will be some other queries, issues, whatever you want to be answered, that can be incorporated as well. So without wasting any further time, without much further ado, I would just begin off. So let me first start off with a customary question that how is Apala feeling? How is she feeling after this astounding result?
So I'm feeling great, and right now being able to talk with you, I think that is something of great honor for me. So I think I'm feeling really good.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind words, but I'm just like any other man. In fact, I see myself as a person of below average IQ because I've seen many people much more sharper than I am. So
you're just
that is what that's what I feel.
humble, sir.
It's being very modest of Abhishek, sir.
Yeah.
No, I can give names. I can give names of people who literally belittled me with how smart they were. So I was like, no, I can't even follow the conversation. Forget about contributing to it. Anyway, so I would like to ask, hey, what was your approach for the interview? How did you approach it? Generally, people think that, okay, this is just a personality test and UPSC will see what we are. So there's nothing to prepare about it. So let me ask, do you think that there is anything to prepare about it, or it is just you take it as it comes?
No, sir. I think that every stage of this exam requires the due respect that it deserves. And same goes for interview. And when I started preparing for the interview, even I spoke to a lot of people. And the advice that I got was that it is a personality test. You don't need to study anything. But I would say that that is a completely wrong approach, because knowledge is a very important aspect of your personality. And if you don't know about your own self, if you don't know about your background, about your hometown, then that would also reflect on your personality. So knowledge forms the basic building block, and you need to intensively prepare for it. I also saw your videos, and since I saw in one of your videos that you had consistently got good scores in interview. So that made me believe that if you prepare for it, then it is actually possible to have a good score, and it is not just a matter of luck or a factor of chance. So that made me, and you had also mentioned that you had prepared for 3 months for interview. So that is what I followed. I took a timeline of 3 months. Fortunately or unfortunately, the exam got postponed, and we had a lot more time in hand for interview. So I think for the entire 9 months of the preparation, I was continuously preparing for interview, and there were a lot of aspects in my DAF that I had to intensively prepare about. For example, the health sector, that is my background, and army, that is my father's occupation. So I think preparation is definitely required.
Okay, so asking about what kind of questions do they ask in the interview? Like, if you could categorize that, okay, these are the 3-4 sectors where we need to prepare. So DAF is one that you mentioned about the background, right?
Yes, sir.
So yours is medical, your dad's is like from the army. So what other sectors did you focus upon while preparing the interview? Like, if you were to initiate a beginner to this process, that okay,
Yes,
these
sir.
are the things that you need to prepare for the interview.
So for the interview, we can divide the preparation into two aspects. One is the detailed application form that you fill after the mains exam, and the second is the current affairs portion. And for both the areas, your approach should be to be understanding the issue at hand in such a way that you're able to explain it to someone else, or you're able to talk about it. Because at times we've read about something and we can write about something, but we cannot explain it or we cannot talk about it. There is a lot of hesitation involved, or there are gaps in our understanding. So speaking about something, I think, is the toughest part of this entire preparation. And as for DAF, sir, DAF also again needs to be divided into other sectors. For example, it should start with your own name. You should know the meaning of your name. My first question in my interview was the meaning of my name. So that begins with the first word of your detailed application form and goes on till the last word of it. So every and any word of DAF needs to be thoroughly prepared.
And when you say thoroughly prepared, what do you mean by that? I'm asking this question because generally an approach is followed in the interview that you need to prepare 100 questions from your DAF. So do you think that this approach of 100 questions is enough to cover any subject of your DAF thoroughly?
So we cannot give a number because everyone's DAF is different. If I speak about myself, I had a lot of states in my DAF since my father is from the army background. So we've stayed in different states. And I had to prepare about almost all these states because I was worried that question can be asked in any direction. And you need to have at least some knowledge about the areas where you have stayed in. So those questions might increase, might decrease, but your focus should be to have certain theoretical knowledge of that area. Have a look at the previous year transcripts. Those are very helpful, especially for issues such as international relations. You can have a look at the transcripts. Questions are asked on a similar line. And for your state, you can see, just type it, or download it on your computer or smartphone and just have a look at it. So that can form one basis of preparation.
Okay, so for those who are listening, I would like to add that what she said, what Apala said, that here, not just the question, you have to have the thorough background knowledge of it as well.
Yes.
And that is what basically the approach that I followed, that X number of questions is good enough, but that is only maybe half of the preparation. Because if you think that you have developed X number of questions and that is going to be enough, at some point or in some way or the other, the questions that you have written are actually a subset of your knowledge. And you
Yes.
cannot imagine that you know everything. If you go online, you read many things, you find out many things. And those points you can incorporate in your answers and they make for very unique answers. And that is the kind of approach that I followed, that you have to read Wikipedia thoroughly for whatever word appears in your DAF. And that builds up your knowledge, and you can use permutation and combinations of what you know in other answers as well. Okay, so moving on, there's this one question that what is the UPSC personality test about after all anyway? Some people are very confused about it, that why do they need it anyway, and it is so unpredictable. I got 150 last year and 193 before that, and now I don't know what will happen to me. So what was your mindset, that what is this about? Why am I going there anyway? Just because UPSC has called me, or is this a purpose to this?
So I think if we talk about the communication aspect, then that aspect is necessary not just for your interview, but throughout your service and throughout your life. So that aspect needs testing, and it is very important. It is important if you're able to present your ideas in a proper manner, or you're unable to have clarity of thought while speaking about something, while you discuss something. And also, as I said, that an understanding of an issue is more clearly established if you're able to talk about it. So I think presenting yourself, being humble, having a personality that is a little balanced, even if you have extreme views, you should know how to put it out there in a manner that you can convince the interviewer about your stand. And also, if you have opinions or you've just memorized things, that can also be analyzed in the interview. Because at times, what happens is that counter questions are asked on whatever we say, and the panelists start digging deep into that matter. So you must be able to support your stand with proper arguments and not be someone who just who just has superficial knowledge. So I think it is very important to test all these aspects.
Okay, so you mentioned about the balanced stand, So how do I actually develop a balanced stand? Because at the end of the day, if I see it from the point of a bureaucrat or an aspiring bureaucrat, at the end you have to take a decision. You're not just some person who is writing a theoretical exposition that this can be done, that can be done, and without any decision. At the end, balance is one thing, but at the end, when you have to take a decision, you go one way or the other. So how did you like resolve this dilemma between balance and one way or the other?
Uh, so balanced stand here does not mean to not have opinions. It means putting out your opinions in a way that they do not sound very arrogant, that they sound convincing. And when you have an opinion, that opinion must be only of that must not sound like you're complaining. It must sound that you like you have thought about it, and after thorough thinking, you've come to this conclusion and you take this stand. So a convincing capacity must be there, and that convincing capacity must come from knowledge. If you have a background knowledge and you have made an opinion about it, then you should be able to support your opinion. I think this is what they're judging. If you're able to handle the pressure and still stand by your stand, then that, I think that is a very good thing.
Okay, so I broadly agree with the answer. What I like to add here is, what I would like to add here is that, see, I always imagined that even the honorable judges of the Supreme Court differ in judgments. That does not make anyone wrong or another person right. It is decided by majority at the end of the day. But then what they do is that they write out their opinion in a logical manner that why do I think so? And
Yes,
at least this is what UPSC is expecting out of a candidate, that, okay, you
yes,
have an opinion, at least it is aligned with the constitution and the existing laws. You have not mugged it up out of somewhere. You
yes,
have thought about it rationally. And you have also thought about what are the counterpoints to your opinion, and you have pondered upon them. And finally, you have reached a conclusion. That is what they are looking at. That
yes, yes.
process, and basically you're aligned with the constitution. That is what they must be looking. That is what I like to tell myself.
Exactly.
So about that. And you mentioned that you should be able to stand by your opinion, but I think you must have been involved in discussions before the interview, like for practice. And it
Yes,
must
yes,
have happened over there that sometimes our opinion is proved not well thought out, not well thought of, right? Sometimes in a debate, you are proven insufficient, that your opinion is not well decided, or it is not well pondered over. So we tend to change our opinion that, yeah, I did not consider this point and I should think more about it. And then
yes,
for
sir.
the preparation for the interview, we change our opinion sometimes, like on some issues that, okay, I was not well informed about that.
Okay.
And my question about this entire thing is that what would you do if it happens with you in the interview? You presented your opinion, you presented 5 points in favor of it. The interviewer then presented 5 more points, and then you within yourself you found out that, okay, I did not consider these points and this negates my opinion. So what do you do
Yes.
now? Do you stand by your opinion? Do you accept your fault and then look like fickle minded? So how do you handle that situation?
So here I think you, as you said, that you need to substantiate it with logic. If logically you genuinely feel that you missed out on some part, then you can say, yes, I thank you for adding this to my information because I did not think about it. However, if they're only trying to grill you and if you genuinely support your stand, then you must continue taking it. This happened with me in one of the members panel. The current affairs news was that day's morning's news only, so I was a little underprepared about it, but I took a stand. And that stand was related to reservation in education. I will not go into the details of the question. But then after I took a stand, at least four counter questions were presented to me. But I naturally, with a lot of logic and calmness, explained why I am taking this stand, what I personally believe, and it might not be in concurrence with the others' belief system, but this is what I find personally as a very strong argument. So, if you think that your argument is logical, then you can definitely stand by it. But if there occurs any circumstance where you genuinely feel that you should not have spoken that, or something is adding to your knowledge, then you can even accept that with humility. So there's nothing wrong in that, but it depends from question to question, actually.
Yeah, that is broadly what I agree with. I used to say that there's a difference between rigidity and firmness.
Yes, sir.
And you have to be firm, not rigid.
Yes, sir.
If you know your opinion was not well thought out, and you have missed some points, basically you know that you have been proven wrong, then you accept it.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
be rigid or arrogant over there. You are not supposed to be servant. You are not supposed to be someone who knows everything. You're
Yes,
supposed to be someone who has worked hard, but then someone who is willing to improve. So
yes,
that is what I used to think while preparing for the interview, that if I'm proven wrong, then I'll accept it. But if I know I've been proven wrong, if there's just a difference of opinion and nobody is able to prove each other insufficient, or just nobody is able to win the debate. So to say, it is not a debate, but then to put it crudely a little bit,
Yes, sir.
if nobody is able to convince the other person, then we can just agree to disagree. Not in these exact words, but if you can humbly say that, most humbly, sir, I would like to submit that this is what I'm able to think of as of now.
Yes,
So
sir.
the candidate has to know the difference between rigidity and firmness. Now, there is a very, very important concept, or so to say, gyan, that goes along the interview, that people say that you should never give answers more than 30 seconds or more than 3 sentences. Do you agree with that?
Sir, this is something that I would like to put out here, is that I went with this gyan only inside the interview chamber. And I realized that they were actually willing to listen to me a lot. And there were certain awkward moments when I would stop giving the answer, but they would still be nodding, as it would feel like they wanted to listen more. But I had trained myself to speak less, because in a lot of mock interviews, I was getting this feedback that you should speak more precisely, be more precise. So in certain cases, I became so precise that later I realized that they want to genuinely have a conversation, and they genuinely want to listen to my opinion and thoughts. And you should not train your brain to anything, any timing of 30 seconds. Definitely preciseness should be there in your personality and in your answers, but it should not be limited to just 30 seconds. If the question demands thinking through, if the question is very thought provoking, then you can go ahead and speak your mind out.
Yeah, I kind of am not someone who tells people that no, 30 seconds is the golden rule. There is no such golden rule like that. In fact, I remember my own interview, CSE 2019. The question was, what will you bring from civil engineering to civil services? And I gave a, I think, 2 minute long answer, maybe more than that, because that panel member could only ask me 2 questions.
Yes, sir. But
But
here,
then,
I think sticking to the question is very
yeah,
important.
I
Like,
agree.
you can speak more, but don't flow away from the question.
Definitely, most certainly. In fact, I think one has to be wise enough, one has to be practiced enough, and one has to be experienced enough to understand where I should speak for 2 minutes and where I should just skip the question. These are two extremes.
Yes.
And it is not like means that every question carries equal marks. So you don't have to devote equitable time to every question.
Yes, sir.
So that is the kind of advice that I give to people, that you have to understand where you have to play on the front foot and where you have to go to the back foot, to use the cricket metaphor.
Definitely.
So that is what I would like to ask here about this. So another question, how did you handle situational questions? People are terrified, petrified of situational questions, that what do? We have never been to the field. How do we know how to handle situational questions? We have just read the books. So what was your approach for situational questions?
Sir, I think the first thing that in situational questions that they are judging is whether you're able to be calm and composed and not be scared of situational questions. I think that is the first prerequisite. The second thing is that they do not want very technical answers. You should have a basic understanding, and you should have a basic answer like we do in case studies about the issue. And those answers should show certain values of yours, such as they might reflect on your empathy, or they might reflect on any value that you have inculcated during the preparation. It need not be necessarily entirely a technical answer that must be correct by the book. So you can say what you believe is right. It is all right. It does not need to be very highly technical.
Okay. And about the DAF, I've seen a few DAFs, and I have seen people following two strategies. Sometimes some people tend to fill as much as they can, that I want to show various colors of my personality. And some people tend to leave some entries completely empty. Okay, so would you recommend people to go like extremely aggressive in the DAF, or do you think it is advisable to leave even some entries empty just because I'm not comfortable with anything that I could think of to fill here?
Okay, I think here honesty should be there. You should not go aggressively overboard. That is definitely not recommended, because your DAF becomes your syllabus. And I myself could not understand it initially, and I had seen a lot of things in my DAF itself. But I think a DAF should be limited. It should be honest. You should not just skip anything just because you feel that, oh no, a question might be asked on this, so I'll just skip all my hobbies. I'll not write anything. That can also not be done. Just be honest, but be limited. Don't go overboard. It is not a show off CV. It is something that on which you will have to prepare and prepare a lot. So just give yourself a break and have a good DAF. Like, don't go overboard.
So how much time did you take to fill your DAF?
So I filled it very quickly because I did not have any guidance from anyone. So I just honestly filled whatever I had done in my college, and I think that became something very huge for me and very tedious for me because I also had a lot of states to prepare, and preparing states takes a lot of time. So I think my DAF was not the ideal DAF. I would not recommend writing everything and anything in DAF, honestly. But yes, you should give at least a week to analyze, fill it in rough first, then think over those issues that way. And also, sorry to come up. Also, one should write precise things. For example, if you're writing reading novels, don't give a very broad head. You can write reading fiction, or you can write reading non-fiction, or reading international relations non-fiction. So be as precise as you can.
Okay, and there is this idea that people say that one should be able to direct the interview. You should be able to direct the interviewer into areas of your comfort. Did you practice that? Do you believe in that?
So I personally think that it might be possible in the mocks, but in the main UPSC interview, your interview can go in any direction and they can ask you anything. So your emphasis should not be on directing the interview. Your emphasis should be on how easily you can handle the questions thrown at you randomly, and how and the presence of mind that you can develop during this time period, so that even if they ask any thought-provoking question, you can actually think about it and immediately answer it. So I think don't try to be over smart in the interview is what I'll say.
Okay, and how much role does fluency in English play in the in scoring a good score in the interview? Like, do you have to be really fluent, or some people from rural background think that, okay, I'm not that fluent, so my personality score will never be good. So how did you find the experience?
Sir, I think fluency in English should not be a matter of concern because what they're looking at is the clarity of thought. Even if you're speaking broken English, your thought process should be clear, and you should be able to chart out your information in a lucid manner. That should be the emphasis. And I think अगर English खराब है तो घबराने की कोई बात नहीं है.
And what kind of answers do you prefer? Like qualitative answer or quantitative answer? Did you quote a lot of data? Did you quote a lot of committees? Or it was just speaking out of my mind kind of thing?
So if you are quoting a data, you should know which data you're quoting. And if you are taking the name of any committee, you should know what committee it is. It should not happen that you took a name of a committee and then they ask, who is he? And then you say, I don't know, sir. So that would look bad on your part. So I think whatever you're saying, whatever little things you're remembering, just have a backup information on that. Nothing should be thrown without thinking, is what I feel.
Okay, and then met many aspirants who have been thoroughly confused with this question. This one very simple and mostly very innocuous question, by the way. Tell me about yourself. So people are confused that, okay, what should I do? Should I just recite my DAF? Should I tell something else entirely? How long should the answer be? What should I do? So what was your approach about that?
Sir, I think it should begin. I think I followed a very traditional approach for that. It must begin with your name and your educational qualification. Sometimes the board specifically asks, introduce yourself with your educational and professional background. So these two things must be there, definitely. Apart from that, you can include one line on your hobby if you are comfortable, if you want them to discuss your hobby. Otherwise, you can skip it. And one line if they want to listen more. If sometimes they say introduce yourself by something that is not written in your DAF. So for that, you can use your strengths and weaknesses. Just jot down a few strengths, a few weaknesses, anything that you like, anything that any experience that you have that can be added. But I think one must stick to the traditional approach only here.
Okay, and can you criticize the government? Once again, a question that thoroughly confuses people, and people take very, very extremely opposite opinions. So, what is your stand on that?
So here I'll say that don't criticize it just for the sake of criticizing it. If you genuinely have a problem with any policy, be ready to support it logically. You can definitely criticize the government, you can definitely take a stand against a certain policy, but be ready to support your arguments. If you are able to logically support your arguments and convince the board, then definitely you will get good marks.
Okay, and was your optional subject your graduation subject as well?
No, sir. I have graduated in Bachelor's of Dental Surgery, and this is not available in the list of optionals. So my option was anthropology.
So, once again, anthropology, a subject that attracts a lot of questions, not just the technical part, but why did you take anthropology? Because we can finish the syllabus in 4 months, and the scores in the previous years have been well. So, I think that you must have faced this line of questioning somewhere or the other in the mock, if not in the UPSC interview. So, what was your approach to handle this? Like, why anthropology?
So this is actually the question that I am being asked now in these interviews rather than the personality test interviews. So, sir, I took anthropology because I wanted to be as close as my background as possible. I come from a biology background, and anthropology has a portion of physical anthropology, which has topics like evolution, genetics. So, that is what made me decide on anthropology. I later got to know that it also has a short syllabus, which I personally don't think because I spent a lot of time in it. But other than that, I think it should be your optional should match your strengths. It should not be vice versa. Like the optional should not be strong. You should be strong in your optional.
Very well said. I agree. It should be a subject of your interest that you can study if needed, or at least 10 hours a day, or even more.
Yes.
So, were there questions from anthropology in your interview? I mean, the technical part now.
Yes, sir. So one member asked, I think, completely asked on anthropology. And what was asked was not what we study in the anthropology UPSC syllabus. Those were rather questions which were very thought provoking. For example, one question I was asked was the relationship between religion and culture. And another question I was asked was that there is linguistic diversity in India. So, do you think there should be legal diversity also in India? So there were very thought-provoking questions. As I said, there might be a lot of unprepared questions thrown at you in the interview, but you need to handle it and you need to have presence of mind to think through such questions.
And did you have, like, this is once again a question based on conventional grammar. So, did you have approaches charted out as per the chairperson of the interview board? Like, if Manoj Soni says board come, then I'll do this. If PK Joshi says no, he's the chairman, so his board will not come. But if Smita Nagaraj ma'am board come, I'll do this. So, did you have this thing that many people tend to do?
No, sir. And this, I'll just say that this is not advisable at all, because you should not have any preconceived notions in your head, because these can also act as a demotivating factor. What if you get a board which you have mentally thought of as not being good, for example, though every board is very good? So then you might just end up demotivating your own self. So I avoided looking at the names of the boards in the transcripts also. And when I got to know that I had Dr. Manoj Soni sir's board, I had absolutely no preconceived notion about that board. So I did not even know, like that was the first time I was looking at the name also. So that helped, I think.
It is generally said that you should not judge your own interview while you are in the room, at least, right? So, if I were to ask you this, that what was the lowest point of your interview and how did you cope with that while you were in the interview room? Can you recall something like that?
So the lowest point, as such, I think there was one point, as I mentioned, where a question was asked on that day, that morning's newspaper itself. And though I had read it, but somehow in the morning of the interview, your brain is not very highly functional, so that you can remember every detail. So that was a point where I took a stand and I got a counter on that stand. And then I again supported my stand, and then I got again a counter on my stand, And then I started thinking, that was a dilemmatic moment. I started thinking that have I made a mistake? But then I stuck to it. I supported my arguments. I told the panelists why I had said so, and I think that was it. That was the only low moment. In the starting, definitely you're anxious. Starting moments are definitely low, but gradually you take pace.
In retrospect, do you think that really was a low moment, or was it something that maybe added a lot to your score because it showed maybe firmness, maybe it showed
Yes, sir.
that you have rationally thought out your opinion? So in
Yes, sir.
retrospect, would you say that was a low moment? Or I just
Yes,
asked
sir.
that that was a low moment during the interview, but in
Yes, sir.
retrospect,
Definitely, sir. We are always wiser in hindsight. So yes, that was I think that would one more moment that I remember right now is that initially, we always prepare a lot for the interview, but sometimes your interview goes in a completely different direction. So the second question that was asked to me by the chairman was that what brings you here to this chair where you're sitting today? And that was something which I did not know how to answer. So I told him that I have been preparing for UPSC. I told him a very simple two-line answer for that. So then he said, so you don't have any struggle story? What is this story? There are no struggles here. So then for 2 seconds, I became very anxious as to how to reply to such a question. So then I said that, sir, I think your identity must not be defined by the struggles you face, but rather the lessons that they teach you. And I think that is what set the pace of my interview, this line. So then he said, good, good. And that is what made me feel also comfortable. So
yeah, that was very well said. In fact, when I heard this question, I thought this question is one of wit rather than that of knowledge or understanding or anything like that. They just want to test your presence of mind and how do you come back to a question like that.
yes,
And the second question was just like that. So very well said, and you handled that situation very well. So probably that's why this unimaginable feat. So you mentioned about current affairs, right, in the interview. Would
yes.
you say that the approach to cover current affairs differs from written part to the personality test part, or is it just the same way?
So I think in the personality test, you take one step beyond the written part portion, because in the personality test, you also need to have your own opinions and your own analysis ready. For example, I was asked on the Afghanistan situation. That was a very burning topic at that time. So in that also, you need to have your own opinion ready, because at times they would stop you in the middle of the answer and say that, no, tell us your opinion. What do you feel about this issue? So I think the preparation goes one step beyond. You need to be more analytical. You need to be more thorough with current affairs. You might start reading another newspaper also, and more time can be devoted to current affairs here.
Did you start reading another newspaper?
Yes, sir. I started reading Indian Express for the interview.
So before that, were you reading only the Hindu or?
Yes, sir. I was reading only the Hindu. But for interview, I felt that Indian Express is also good.
Okay, so no Times of India because there's another conventional Gyan that says that we should read Times of India because people over there read Times of India. And in fact, I did so as well before the
Yes, sir.
interview. So
So
you did
yes,
not
sir,
like go for it.
I tried it, sir. I even started it, but then it was becoming very hectic. So I could not keep that up. But yes, that is said. That is true.
And what kind of preparation did you do for your graduation subject? Because once again, it can become a low point of your interview because they will expect you to be at least at some level proficient in your subject because you, after all, have a degree in that. So how did you balance this BDS as well as anthropology because both became your subjects?
Yes, sir. So I think for that I troubled my friends a lot, and who had not been asked such questions for ages, and suddenly they had to look deep inside themselves. So I took help from my friends. There was also a friend of mine who was a graduate in BDS who was appearing for the UPSC interview. So we discussed a few topics of dentistry, though both of us had forgotten most of it. So I think for dentistry, the basics, I realized that dentistry is something that you need to know the basics very well, because they will not dwell into very technical aspects. So every common questions that a common person can ask, questions like how do you brush your teeth, even the most basic questions that I prepared for any from a very common person's perspective.
And about the discussion, I personally have been a votary of the idea that for mains, you can just prepare by yourself. You can cover the syllabus, write the test series, even analyze your paper yourself. But for interview, you do need a discussion group. So what is your opinion regarding that?
Yes, a discussion gives you a speaking practice, which is very much required for interview. And as I said, for BDS, I had a friend who also helped me in the health sector aspect, because that was also common. And so if you don't have friends, then you can take help maybe of your parents if you're living at home. Maybe some of your other friends can help you and not in this background, but you must have a practice of speaking and explaining things. I think that helps a lot. If you don't have anyone, just take the help of a mirror. So just discuss with yourself.
Yeah, that is what I used to do. Not exactly a mirror, but yeah, discuss with yourself. I used to record myself. Some people completely disagree with that approach, but I did so. And another thing, now two polar opinions about it. Both of them exist in our circle. How many mocks should you give? Some people give 60 mocks, some people give 20, and some people just don't go for mock interviews at all. What is your opinion? How many is an optimal number? Or if it differs from person to person, what should be the parameters to figure it out?
Yes, I'll address both these aspects. So I gave around 4 offline mocks, and I think 4 was more than enough for me. So in mocks, sometimes what you need to judge, why you must give at least one mock, is because at times we think that we might be able to answer very well. And when we sit in front of the board, we start speaking very fast sometimes. Sometimes we start stammering, and sometimes we just miss the point of the question. That happens a lot. So I think for that, you must give mocks. But the purpose of the mock should be that you must analyze your own self. Set parameters for yourself before going for the mock. Just have a basic framework of how you think you will perform in the mock, and see if you could perform that much or not. Because sometimes the feedback is useful and sometimes it is not, and sometimes the feedback is very pinpointed. You don't have to go in that much depth about your own personality. So just have a basic outlook on yourself and see if you could perform that much or not. So that should be the parameter. If you're satisfied after 3 mocks, then I think I was satisfied after 3 mocks. That I felt that was enough.
In this very conversation, you mentioned that you had many states in your draft. And you also mentioned that you have to prepare a state very thoroughly. It is a difficult task. So what were your heads to prepare a state? Like, this is what I would be covering in a state at least. And then added to that would be the news.
Yes, sir. So current affairs aspect, keeping that aside, I think you should first know the history of your state. And history goes back to the ancient history. Why your state is named that way? What is the significance behind the name? All the historical aspects. Then comes the economic aspect. You must know the GDP, you must know the budget of your state, how much your state is spending on education, on health. Then the political aspect. In the same manner that we divide the sectors in our answers in GS, I think all those sectors need to be dealt with for states also. You need to know the forest cover of your state if we talk about environment. So for every aspect, for society, we must know what is the gender ratio of the state. So every sector needs to be dealt with independently for the state. And for myself, I also had to do a comparative analysis of all the states, because that was something that I thought was a probable question. And basic questions like, which state do you like more if you've lived in 2 states? So we usually do not have a straight answer to that. That must be prepared.
Okay. And about the current affairs, like you mentioned about the controversial questions. But suppose if there is a factual question, because sometimes it happens that they don't intend to really talk about just the factual stuff, but it is just a conversation starter. Maybe they are talking about resource mobilization and they start with, do you know what was the recent tax collection of GST in the previous month? And it might so happen that you might have missed that data. So how do you handle that situation where you know that you should know something, but you don't? And now it is going to become an embarrassing low point for my interview. Was there something at the back of your mind to handle such situation?
Sir, if you don't know facts, then you must straight away say that I cannot recall the fact right now. Or you can say, I think it is better to say I cannot recall rather than saying I am not aware or I don't know. Because obviously you must have read it somewhere, but right now you don't remember it. So you can straight away admit that you do not recall the fact. That is not a low point for the interview. Even they realize that it is not possible to remember each and everything. But it is also wise to have a list of all the facts that you must remember for the interview. For example, saying that you do not know the economic situation of the country at present, or you do not know the vaccination rate at present, that would not be good on your own part. So have a list. I'll tell about myself. For example, so my father is in the army, and at that time the movie Shesha had released just before my interview. So I had to remember the names of all the Paramveer Chakras, because just in case they ask me, it would look very bad if I don't even know that. So just have a small list of the things that you feel are important, especially for economics. Economics is very important.
Okay. Just because you mentioned economics, I have been also thinking, and sometimes it does happen that even in the interview, they ask you to pick an area of your interest. And that becomes a very troubling question, because if you mention an area and you are not able to answer, then definitely you're in trouble. So did you prepare for one area?
Yes, sir. I had prepared very thoroughly for international relations. So that would have been my area of choice, but I was not asked any such area, thankfully. Other than that, sometimes they also say that, do you want to say anything more, or do you want to talk about anything more? So
Yeah.
for that also, you can prepare something interesting. A girl in my batch talked about her YouTube channel, which she had started. So that became a very interesting conversation for her. So you can do anything.
One more thing. Now, people are confused about it, and I've faced questions regarding that, not in the interview, but from people. Should you guess, or should you ask for permission to guess? That's sir, may I guess?
So you should ask for permission to guess. But if you think that you're very close to the data, if you're continuously in self-doubt throughout the interview, you cannot say that for every question. But definitely you should ask for permission to guess, because any random bluffing is not appreciated in the interview.
Okay, so you were saying that if you have a decent idea of what the actual answer is, then you can ask for permission to guess. Otherwise, you should just avoid.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And another question. At this end, or having cleared the exam now, I think it must sound very trivial to you. But some aspirants get confused about it. What should be the dress code? What should you wear? How much does that matter?
So I'd say you should stick to formal clothes, and don't wear anything that makes you look a little non-serious. Don't go overboard with wearing jewelry or anything. Just stick to the basic, most simple, most basic dress code. I think that is good enough. And it does not matter very much, but you should be decently dressed. You should look neat and tidy. I think that is it.
Okay, another question, slightly trivial, but then people do ask this. What is the order of wishing the interview board? Do you like just wish individually, or do you just give one good morning, sir, ma'am, and sirs out there, or do you wish in bunches, like once for the chairperson, twice for the two people on the right, and once for the two people on the right, and once for the two people on the left? People are thoroughly confused about it. People tend
Okay.
to give different opinions, and then people ask this question. That is why I'm asking.
So, sir, I don't know the correct answer to it, but I'll tell what I did. So I
Okay.
wished thrice, one for the chairman, one for the women members sitting, like good morning, sir, good morning, ma'am, and good morning, sir, for the rest of the members. So I wished thrice.
Yeah, incidentally, that is what I used to do as well. First for the chairperson, then good morning, ma'am, and sir, good morning, sirs.
Yeah,
So three
ma'am
times.
before sir. That
Yeah.
should be kept in mind.
Yeah, this is exactly what I used to do as well. Okay, then I'm asking this question because generally I used to say that you should aim for a dominant positive impression. Like you cannot you cannot impress the interview board thoroughly. They will find flaws in your personality. Okay, they will find something or the other that will not be in your favor. But it does not mean that your interview is downhill. Your interview has gone south and you have to come next year. So what was your basic idea while preparing for the interview, that this is what I'm targeting in the interview?
So my basic idea was to look like a person who has a thought, who has not just come up here mugging up things, but who has thought about the issues that are going on in the country. And I think that basic idea would help anyone Because to be in the services, you need to be a person of substance who actually thinks about issues, who's just not completely unaware of the surroundings, who is एक जागरूक नागरिक होना चाहिए आपको. So this is the basic impression that I thought would help, and I strived a lot for it because even till mains, I think you have certain knowledge gaps which you have to fill in your interview, especially current affairs.
Very much so. You have massive knowledge gaps, not just some knowledge gaps, but you have massive knowledge gaps. I mean, that is what I would say about my own experience.
Definitely.
And there are certain tricky questions. Like I would mention some questions like, what are the 5 most important challenges that India is facing? 5 most important geopolitical trends that have emerged in the past 10 years? 5 most important security challenges. Now, I have experienced, what I've experienced with these questions is that if you think about it for 2 minutes, you're going to come up with very good answers. But
Yes.
when you are in the chair, just thinking off the top of your head, you don't give very good answers. So was there a list of questions with you that you like listed out and prepared that 5 most important this, 5 most important that? Because if you think about it, you can give very good answers. So
Yes.
this is what I did. I prepared. So did you go by the same approach?
Yes, so you should be pre-prepared with such answers, because giving it in sitting in that chair, you might be able to give 1 or 2 points, but coming up with 5 points at that moment is it is highly difficult. So you should be prepared at least challenges of your state, challenges of your background, challenges of the services you're opting for, challenges of the occupation of your parents. For example, I was asked challenges in the army. So I had already prepared that question and that was asked to me, but I would not have been able to answer that question if I was not prepared. So you need to be prepared with positives and negatives of everything.
Okay. And one another question. I don't know if it might be asked to you, if it was asked to you in the interview, but then almost every candidate faces this at some point of the time or the other. Why do you want to join civil service? And then most people use this one word, diversity. So
Okay.
what was your approach regarding that? And what is your opinion regarding diversity? This one word that is thrown around so much that it has almost lost its meaning.
Okay. So that is actually a very good word, and I wish I knew it before. I would have incorporated it in my answer.
I would have advised you to not. It is used a lot.
So, sir, for me, I think your reason of joining the civil services should be genuinely why you want to join the civil services. And for me, it was actually having a larger canvas to work on, having a larger picture to paint, because I come from a field which is slightly narrowed down to the health sector or the oral cavity in general. And coming to civil services would give a broader scope. So yeah, basically the basic answer remains the same for most people, but you have to put it in a way that it sounds genuine and it is related to you. Don't just say diversity, just relate it with your background and give proper reasons for it.
Yeah, I agree with that point. In fact, my approach to prepare for HR was not just an honest answer, some sense of uniqueness in it, but at the same time, since it is an HR question, it is about you. So you should be able to at least substantiate that how did you reach to this conclusion about you. If you're going to mention
Yes,
your
sir.
strength, that is my strength. It did not come out of an epiphany. You must have realized at some point. You must have realized that at some point of your life. Same about weakness. Same about any instance of your life, and
Yes,
same about why do you want to join civil service. It has to come out of you, and it has to be related to your life. So
definitely.
with this, I would like to thank you for sparing your valuable time, and from personal experience, I know that you must be very busy right about now,
Yes,
and you must be
sir.
getting 100 calls per day. So it must have become very tiring to respond to all those calls. So
Yes,
I
sir.
would like to thank you for sparing your time, and
No, sir, I would
thank you
like to
for
thank
guiding
you
everyone.
for having me here and like calling me on this platform.
So
It
before
was
we
my
call
pleasure.
it an
It
end, I
was
would like to add few things, sir. Abhishek sir, thank you very much for sparing your precious time. And thank you, Apna ma'am. And it has been a wonderful experience, not for the students, but for teachers like me with experience of more than 21 years, that we have such a pleasant personality with us today who can give such a wonderful insight into the interview. Usually when we bring toppers like the students that whom we have taught and the students, so fairly, yes, we have no connect with you straightforward, But yes, the experience that you shared, it will definitely go a long way in helping our students to shape themselves for that final hurdle of UPSC, that personality test. And we will remain indebted for this kind of an insight.
No, sir.
That was a wonderful experience listening to you. And hopefully see you sometime soon, somewhere in Chandigarh or somewhere nearby.
Definitely, sir.
Right. Hanji Abhishek sir, thank you very much for all the time that you have spared for us. Right. Thank you. And students, stay back. We have some more announcement to make. Sir, thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
It was genuinely my pleasure. Thank you very much for this time, this opportunity that was given. Thank you all once again for coming and sharing your insights.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Ji. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, sir. All right, students. So this was rank 8 this year and rank 9 this year and rank 8 last year. And very seldom you get such a chance where you get two toppers interacting and sharing their experience. And at Raj IAS platform, you will always get such opportunity where we will help you interact with those who have been taught by us. And we will also try to bring more knowledge for you, more experience for you by asking our selected students to bring other selected students, so that you can get a diversity of experience and you can then plan your success with us, right? So with this, we come to the end of the session for the day. And I hope the NCERT course that we started with you, you have enjoyed it. And before I bring this session to an end, I would like to give mic to a couple of students like Manoj Sharma, who has raised hand. Manoj, before you ask your question, let me have this opportunity to ask a question to you. If you can switch on your mic. Manoj Sharma. Meanwhile, I will give mic to Bhavya Jain because it seems that Manoj is not able to switch on his mic. Bhavya Jain, can you please quickly switch on your mic?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So before you ask me about your doubt, can I ask you a very basic question? Like the way you got the NCERT class today, how did you find it?
Sir, I feel very nice about it because I study first time about UPSC and I started my preparation from yesterday.
Okay.
Before it, I am just confusing and रिसोर्स फाइंड करने में सर पूरा टाइम जा रहा था, मैं पढ़ने पे फोकस नहीं कर पा रहा था. लेकिन सर कल जब आपका मैंने वेबिनार अटेंड किया तो मुझे समझ आया एक बार सिलेबस को ध्यान में रखकर आपको पढ़ने पर फोकस करना है.
Very nice.
Yes, sir.
Right. So what is your doubt? Now please ask me, what is your doubt?
Sir, my doubt is about, can you repeat the glamorous revolution?
Glorious Revolution.
Yes, sir.
See, it is in the English history, in the history of England, that in 1688, the people were not very happy with the king who was ruling over them, James, and people then came to the palace. They then asked the king that we are not happy with the way you rule over us. We would better like to have some other king. And the king, without resisting, without asking his soldiers to, handle the people, he agreed to the demand of the people, the popular demand, and he himself left the crown to give it to someone the people wanted. So in this way, there was no fight, there was no war, there was no bloodshed, and the king was changed. It is like the beginning of the idea of democracy. It is called Glorious Revolution, or it is called the Bloodless Revolution, with which the idea of democracy started taking its shape. After this Glorious Revolution, in the English history, political history of England, we find that the institution called Parliament now started taking its proper shape.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you, sir. You will get my thank when I became IAS.
Oh, definitely. And God bless you. Anoop. Yes, Anoop. Tell me, what is your doubt?
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Sir, I have one doubt that from tomorrow, either we are getting the printed notes or from today.
So from tomorrow, I will give you the notes, and the notes will be in PDF. You can download it from that portal for which we will share the link in the morning with all those students who have already enrolled with us.
हाँ सर, आज का पीडीएफ रहेगा क्या उसमें?
आज का कोई पीडीएफ नहीं है. टुडे इट वाज जस्ट एन इंट्रोडक्टरी सेशन.
अच्छा 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 अच्छा.
राइट.
और रिकॉर्डेड क्लास भी नहीं
रिकॉर्डेड भी
रहेगा क्या
आपको
आज का?
सब, या रिकॉर्डेड भी मिलेगा ऑन द सेम पोर्टल फॉर विच वी विल गिव यू ऑल द डिटेल्स इन द मॉर्निंग. डोंट वरी. एंड हाउ वाज योर एक्सपीरियंस इन द क्लास टुडे?
सर इट्स फॉर अमेजिंग, वंडरफुल. मतलब पहले बार देखा और इट्स ग्रेट.
ऑलराइट, थैंक यू वेरी मच.
helping me in building my personality.
Great, thank you and good night.
Good night, sir.
Now we have Karan K. Yes, Karan, please tell me, what's your doubt?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, sir. Good
Hi.
evening. Today's lecture was good. It was much more understanding, and so I just wanted to share that I have just recently started preparing for IAS, UPSC civil service exams. Right now, my current age is 28 running.
Okay.
So I am looking forward for preparing for 2023. Even if possible, if I just get prepared for prelims till 2022, I would definitely try for 2022 as well.
See,
So
once
I
you
just
have joined the class, I will make a very special personalized timetable for you so that I can help you strategize the entire thing. But that really depends on one-on-one interaction that I do with every person who join my class, so that I can make a very specialized and a very personalized kind of a timetable or a schedule for that student. So if you have already enrolled, you will get a call from my office, and then we'll fix a one-on-one meeting. It will be a video call, and on which I will talk to you. I will understand that how you are spending the time in the entire day, and where need be, I will tell you that how you have to change. And if it is 2022, I have to tell you something, that it is not easy, but at the same time it is not impossible. But remember, within next 7 months you have to do the magic of completing the entire syllabus, so that in the month of April you are not studying anything fresh, you are only doing your revisions, and in June you have to appear for your pre. So for that, it has to be a very strategic planning, for which you have to have that one-on-one interaction with me. And everyone who has enrolled in this NCERT course, we have almost now close to 500 admissions in this NCERT course that started today. So it will take me good about 15 to 20 days to interact with everyone one-on-one, right? So hopefully you will get a chance early, because you have already told me that you plan to give exam in 2022. Rather, I will request every student who has enrolled in the batch to instead, I will do a thing. I will share a doc with you, Google Doc, in which I will ask the students who are appearing for 2022, 23 and 24, and accordingly I will ask my team to allocate time, so that I can take your doubts and give you a proper strategy, proper plan in one-on-one session, right?
Okay, sir. And sir, one more thing, sir.
Yes,
as one of our friend, like who was from Kashmir, he said he was preparing for 2022 as well. So so is there any other course that I should join along with this NCERT
we will definitely
foundation
give you a proper strategy, proper plan according to your needs, but give us some time. We will not hurry with this strategy and planning, because it is the most crucial part of your preparation.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Thank you.
So
thank you.
with this, let's call it a day for the day, and see you guys tomorrow. Those who have enrolled will get all the links. Those who are still thinking, we have shared the link to join. You can join the batch. I will share the link once again in the WhatsApp group and in the Telegram group. Those who still feel that this is their opportunity, this is their chance to start their preparation with that guidance, which can always help them lay a very strong foundation, we are here for you. And God bless you all. Take care. Good night.